Voluntarian podcast with your host Abe Collier, based in Odessa, Ukraine. Here we discuss humanitarian aid, working in an international context, and volunteering. This podcast is a production of Dignity Aid International. Your donations can help us provide humanitarian assistance in this conflict. Please find a link in the description or comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Now, on to the podcast. Hello and welcome to episode 2 of the Voluntarian podcast, a production of Dignity Aid International and friends here in Odessa, Ukraine. I'm joined today by Sergey Panashchuk, a Ukrainian, an independent journalist, a volunteer humanitarian, and a friend. Sergey was born in Odessa, Ukraine, a few years before the fall of the Berlin Wall. He's the founder of Save UA Media, an organization we'll revisit later, and has some extraordinary perspectives on the humanitarian response and the situation of the overall conflict. So Sergey, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
I really appreciate you coming.
I always wanted to be a star, you know.
Well, you're a star today. Let's start from the beginning. Could you tell me about your childhood? Growing up in Odessa during the fall of the Soviet Union, a lot of action. What was your childhood like?
So I was born 7 years before the collapse of Soviet Union. And that was a very interesting experience, you know, to grow up in the 90s. 90s have this air, which like everybody from Soviet Union know what 90s were, because 90s were a hell. Mm-hmm. It was hell on earth. So I came from the district which was populated by the junkies, gangsters, and normal people as well, because like they were all mixed. But it was a crazy time, really. So sometimes when I was like going outside, I was finding myself in a horror movie, like a zombie movie, because there is this district called Palermo, where there was a base of drug dealers. So it was like the whole district where people were just making drugs, like selling heroin, and of course, police was in cahoots with them. So nobody really cared from the police what was going on. And the point is, like, people were going from that district, from that village, so they were walking like zombies, like. And that was like experience. That was like lifetime experience. So when I see horror movies about zombies, well, it's not. You should actually hire them. You should go back in time and hire these people, because they were genuine, you know, and scary, or fucking scary. Oh shit! I should.
No, that's great.
I shouldn't have said.
Don't worry about it. That's what we're here for. Whatever comes.
Whatever.
So, this was particularly bad after the fall of the Soviet Union, right?
It started right after the Soviet Union, because people seems like people like lost their boundaries. They lost the sense of a state, and like police didn't care much. I mean, police had their own problems, and police actually was collaborating with the crimes there, actually. So there was a joke, because they were not get paid, of course, because in the 90s nobody get paid, and like people from the West, from the foreign countries, could like wonder how could you live if you're not get paid like for 2 years or something like that. Well, that's what we did, you know. I'm sitting here right now, but I got through these times, and I was a child back then. So there was a joke about the police that a cop came to his chief and asked him for a salary, and he was like, "Do you have a gun?" "Yes." "So why are you asking me for the salary? Use your gun. Just use your gun." Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's what 90s were. And one thing that happened after the collapse of the Soviet Union, there was no private property before that. Mm-hmm. And after people were able to, the flats they were living were the flats belonged to the state, mm-hmm. to the Soviet Union before that. But after the collapse, they started to like have them as a property. So a lot of people just sold their apartments because they didn't have money, for one thing, and for another they wanted to. Well, a lots of alcoholics, lots of people started drinking after the collapse of the Soviet Union, of course, because it was such a big shift, and it was like this. So someone sold his flat, like, and in 1 week he could buy only a loaf of bread for what is left, because there was inflation, prices were rising. Like the bread in the morning cost, like, for instance, like 10 hryvnia, in the in a few hours 20 hryvnia, and in the evening 100 hryvnia. So it was the hyperinflation, and the prices were rising, like, with every hour. And nobody, like, wasn't prepared for this, and nobody even understand what's going on, and how for how long is going to continues like that.
So how did this period end? What was sort of, how did things calm down economically and get on a more stable footing?
I think it ended, like, towards to the 2000s, and I don't know how how that happened. So, like, in 2000s, we sort of started to be like a normal country in economically. Uh, probably it took time to make this transition from the Soviet Union to some kind of a democratic capitalism or whatever. Because, like, when Ukraine became independent, there was literally zero money, because everything was stored in the bank in Moscow. So they didn't have anything. The infrastructure was like, the factories were connected to the factories all over the Soviet Union. So economy was in ruins, like, from the very beginning of the Ukrainian independence. And like, elites, people from Communist Party who became the mayors or deputies in the parliament, they were only interested in appropriation of the state's property, like factories. So there was this word, I don't know if that makes any sense, privatization. So they were like, so this was like a factory belonged to the state, and but you can actually have it as your own if you pay, like, some small amount, like really small, like ridiculous, because, like, it was it was already decided, like
friends of friends.
Yeah, friends of friends, nepotism, and I mean, that's how they steal. That's how they steal, like, the whole Ukraine, and how the oligarchs became oligarchs. And nobody, of course, not everyone survived through these times. I mean, from the so-called elite, and there was gang shootings in my district. I saw once I was playing in the basketball playground, and I saw people in Lada with their rifles. that was quite an experience. And one time my friend asked me to go out, and I said, like, well, I didn't feel like it. And, like, in half an hour after, in the football field, a gangster was shot. So yeah, that's the inspiring story.
So growing up in this environment, you must have had a lot of ideas about how you wanted to get out of it. But you became a journalist first, right?
I don't know if I became journalist or not. I mean, maybe it's a lifelong journey. I don't know.
I guess in some ways becoming anything is a lifelong journey. But you tried to be a journalist. And how did that happen?
I'm trying to. Yeah, I'm still trying to. I haven't lost my hope.
How did you start?
Well, I heard a voice in my head, right? No, I heard the voice, but it was my voice was my own, of course. I was like, I like reading newspapers, and I like the. I mean, maybe it's like funny to hear from someone, but when I was a teenager, I liked articles. I liked the way the words were uh, put together, and I liked reading. So I wanted to write. Maybe I should have become a writer, not a journalist, because these things are not the same.
No.
They are not the same. Yeah. So when I was like 19, I was in the university. I was studying Ukrainian and Bulgarian language and literature, but I wanted to be a journalist. So I found out that there was a new newspaper, this new newspaper, sports newspaper, and there was this guy uh, who I like a lot. Like I like how he writes. I didn't know that he was like 23. I was 19. He was 23. But like, I like the way he write. I don't like anymore because like it's not how you should write. But at that time it was like, oh my god, he's a god. So and I got a copy of this newspaper, and I found the phone number. I called them. I said, I'm Sergey. I don't know anything. I don't know anything about anything, but I really like to be a journalist. And but in the best thing is, but there's one good thing, that you don't have to pay me. And they were like, okay, but we will pay you. Come. And I came to this newspaper. It was a weekly newspaper, and I was attending like sports games like volleyball play. And I
They
got
paid you.
they did. Yeah,
How much?
So they paid me like 7 hryvnias for 3 articles, right? And that was like $1 and a half or something like that. Yeah, and I found good use for this money, because it was what was it? It was December. It was freaking cold, and outside they were selling tea and a sausage. I got myself a tea and a sausage.
It's a good purchase with your salary. So you started out in a local newspaper.
Yeah.
And did you stay local your whole career?
I thought that I was born for great things. Well, I had this delusion in my mind.
You never know.
We'll see. Yeah, and I was there like for 18 months or something like that. Then I got some connections in the Ukrainian capital in Kiev, and I was invited to work in the national newspaper where I was then 21. So and I was invited to work in a national newspaper. It was tabloid called Blick, owned by some Swiss media group. They owns, or I don't know if they're, I don't know, they are exist. They have Blick Switzerland still. Yeah. So it was owned by the Swiss group, and they wanted to make a great newspaper, the greatest newspaper in Ukraine, with the circulation of 1 million copy. Did it happen? No.
That was the decline of the newspapers at that time too, so not totally their fault.
It's not. Well, I have a different opinion about it, but maybe I should keep it to myself. So I was invited to Kiev, and I worked there in the sports department. And basically, I was invited only because I could barely speak English back then, and like back then it was 2006, like nobody spoke English back then. Now everybody speaks English in Ukraine. Like, well, not everybody, but a lot of people, right?
Quite a few, yes.
Yeah, quite a few people. But like 18 years ago, it wasn't like that. So I was super valuable for them, and that's how I got there, like in the big journalism. Yeah, and when I started like the journey, because like before that it was just a stroll, and then it was a big journey.
So you were in Kiev for how long?
I think like for 3 years in the first run, and then I got back in 2014 for another 2 years or something like that.
2014.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, was a time of big events. Was it related to, I think in 2014 we had the Maidan protests,
Yeah, it started,
as well as the invasion.
It started in the autumn of 2014.
And did you go to Kiev to cover those events to some degree?
I came to Kiev already after the end of the revolution.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I came to Kiev because Kiev has more opportunities than Odessa. I mean, obviously, but I didn't land like a job in Kiev. I started working with the international news agency,
Mm.
like like remotely, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was writing stories from Ukraine, like from the post-Soviet countries, basically, and the agency was sending these articles to the British newspapers mostly.
So let's return to 2014 and then maybe step back a bit and look at the wider picture. So in 2014 we had the Maidan protests. Could you describe a little bit what those were for our audience? How those came about?
The Maidan protests were the result of the inconsistent politics of the uh, former president Yanukovych, because he was elected as a pro-Russian whatever he was, and then he switched his ideas, switched his politics like more to more pro-Western, and Ukraine should have signed a treaty about association with the European Union, which everybody welcomed. But like after talks with Putin, and I think Russia gave like 5 billions or 3 billions dollars as a loan before that.
Mm-hmm.
And Yanukovych said, "Okay, so we're not going to sign this treaty anymore," and that's how Maidan started. If I'm not too old, if my memory is not like going wild, then it was like that. And also because like Yanukovych was not a good president. I mean, well, that is the explanation of why that happened from like official standpoint, which you can probably find in Wikipedia.
Mm-hmm.
If that's what you're asking me, or if you wanna hear my own thoughts about it.
Please expand.
Expand as a universe, right? So because universe is expanding.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, the Maidan was it's complicated. It's complicated probably as a quantum physics. The Maidan was started like every political riot in post-Soviet countries. It couldn't have started like by people, just by people. So someone was standing after behind. Someone were standing behind this.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a thought that it was like two oligarchs, Kolomoisky and Rinat Akhmedov, because Yanukovych Yanukovych wanted to keep the whole Ukraine for himself, so he started to
play both sides against each other. Play the West against Russia and Russia against the
and
West.
also he wanted to push oligarchs from the map and to have more wealth, to accumulate more wealth. So took their factories, took their businesses they had and whatever. So there were cases, and these two, they didn't like it. Of course, they didn't like it. I mean, why it's happening to us? Because we are gods ourselves. So we need to figure out. So we need to do something. So I mean, so this was used. This is a political technique that was used by oligarchs of creating Maidan. And of course, in the Maidan, there were people who genuinely believe that they are standing here for democratic values, for the independence. But I mean, they were put there like. So it was masterminded, but it was masterminded really like beautifully. So it's like they were pushed there, but they didn't know about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like the biggest sign of that the Maidan was not happened on its own, like a big bang, right? So it was in I think it was in November when the in November or in December when the riot police Berkut was ordered to disperse the crowd in the Maidan, and I know from the reliable sources that the riot police were kept there for like 20 hours or 24 hours without food, without being able to go to the toilets, and it was freezing cold. So they were put there for like 20 hours or something like that. They were standing against the crowd. So here is the Berkut, here is the crowd, and at some point a group of hooligans or teenagers or whatever came, and they started throwing rocks and I don't know, bottles into the Berkut. So they attacked. They attacked Berkut and they like vanished like in 1 minute. After that, Berkut got the command to disperse the crowd, and they did it violently. They I don't know if they killed anyone, but they beat people really hard, and some of them became disabled. And like it was wrong, of course, it was wrong, but it was orchestrated. So there was like two groups which was just like pushed into each other by someone. It didn't happen on its own. It wasn't like it's not like the universe just started from the small dot, from the Big Bang. It didn't happen on its own. No. And after that another things happened, and well, it all ended up like in the that Yanukovych got so scared that he fled. So he was scared like a girl, and he fled crying. But he took like there were trucks that were taking cash from his mansion, like lots of trucks. And he went to Severodonetsk, to the town in the Donetsk region in the east. And from Severodonetsk, he wanted to ask Putin to help him to restore the power because there was a military coup. But in Severodonetsk, he wanted also to gather other politicians, other people from the parliament, but nobody came. Nobody came because he lost the authority
when he fled. So there were probably oligarchs paying people to protest against him, but then possibly the protest got out of hand, and he left.
I don't think that oligarchs were paying people. Like as I said, it is complicated as a quantum figure. So people there were genuine. So they were genuinely. Well, because I mean, it's how it's happened. You are standing in the crowds and you see riot police are going and like trying to kill your friend who is standing right behind you. What are you going to do? You will try to defend him. You will try to attack. You will tell this to other people, and you will get the crowd. You will just bring the bigger crowd, and if you see that they are going that they're willing to kill you, then you will try to find your firearms and defend yourself like the next day. So the people were not paid. The situation was created. They created a situation which started. So they started the process. The oligarchs started the process, and they were not able to be in charge of this process anymore. So it got out of hands like this.
Now I remember watching these protests from the West. I would have been just finishing university at that time. And we were excited. This was something that felt very momentous. It felt like a move of Ukraine out of the post-Soviet sphere into a more Western orientation, more aligned with the EU, more aligned with international markets. From the inside, was it perceived that same way? Were people excited about this shift into more of an internationalist or Western world during Maidan?
It's hard to answer this question because people were divided, and what people in the West is also hard to comprehend for people in the West. Like if you have so Yanukovych regime was I don't want to say half totalitarian, but like he wanted to become a dictator, the same as Putin in Russia. So he wanted to have all powers, like in his hands. And when you encounter a person like that, so if you're starting a riot or revolution against a person like that, he's not just going to give you the power, like, okay, so I see there is a lot of people, I respect you, thank you for expressing your feelings, here are more powers to you, like, I mean, that's never gonna happen. So the Maidan and revolution couldn't, by definition, they couldn't end up without blood, or without some shit. But like nobody expected that actually the people can overthrow an authorities. Nobody expected this, and it only happened because of this move of Yanukovych, who fled. It's like they say that if we invent ever quantum computer, it will be able to forecast the future, but there are like a lots of invariables, and this one would. I don't think that any quantum computer would ever could have predict.
I remember it was a big shock. So, speaking of which, at that point, there was a big shift. An interim president was brought in, right? And within a few days, there were Russian forces in Crimea and in Donbass, right?
Yeah, it happened. It happened either right after the Yanukovych fled, or like in a few days. And well, everybody in Ukraine understood that it was Russians who invaded Crimea, and these guys in the green uniform, that they were Russians. Like everybody understands this, and I thought that actually there was going to be war like the one we have now. And I was shocked, of course, because wow, I wasn't in the Maidan. I haven't started it, and now and now there is repercussions and consequences. So I was shocked with everything, with what was happening, but everything what's happening is happening for a reason. Unfortunately, because like everything is happening for a reason.
So, let's see, where were we? Crimea, I believe, and Russian troops coming into Crimea, Russian-backed troops coming into Donbass, Donetsk, and Luhansk. This happened just right after Maidan, right?
Right. Yeah.
So why didn't this escalate into a full-scale war like we see now?
Because it's an interesting question. Because it was the situation was different in Crimea, and in the rest of Ukraine, the situation was different. People in Crimea were like brainwashed from the beginning, from the 90s. There were the Russian Black Fleet stationed in Crimea, and lots of politicians who were coming to Crimea, like Zatulin and Zhirinovsky. And they were agitating. They were pushing this idea that Crimea is Russia, that like Russian people live there, and Ukraine didn't do anything like to counterattack this propaganda. Basically nothing. So the people in Crimea were prepared for something like that. So there were protests from the Crimean Tatars, but they are not.
Pretty small percentage of the population, right?
Yes, they are.
That's like, the native.
There are few 100,000 people. They are considered as a native people in the Crimea. So the people were. I don't know. One of the reasons is that the people were ready for this to happen. Probably. Because the propaganda in Crimea, Russian propaganda in Crimea, was very strong since the 90s. And because the president was an interim president, and they didn't have a will to fight back then. So there was no order given to fight with the people in the green uniform. So basically, they encircled every Ukrainian military units in Crimea and forced them to lay down the weapon. After that, we learned, I think in a few months or in a year, we learned that almost 50% of Ukrainian soldiers who served in Ukrainian army stayed in Crimea and joined the Russian forces. So that's the difference between the Crimea and other parts of Ukraine. In Donetsk, in Lugansk, the Russians managed to take the power because I don't know. I wasn't there like in these regions, but I believe that the propaganda there also was very strong, and politicians from party of regions who were pro-Russians, they were trying to paint this picture that everybody hates people from Donetsk and Lugansk, especially in Western Ukraine. So they were trying to clash two people from Donbass and from the West together, and so there was like a lot of hate speech, a lot of Russian propaganda in Donbass and Lugansk, and also the police were collaborating with the occupants back then, and that's why it happened in Donetsk and Lugansk. It also they managed the Russians managed to take the administrative building in Kharkiv in Mariupol, but these cities were taken. I think Mariupol was taken back by Azov, and the Kharkiv by riot police.
By Ukrainians in both cases.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And Ukrainian military forces managed to stop Russian-backed forces in Donetsk and Luhansk.
The problem is that we didn't have any military. We didn't have any real army, because the program and the way Yanukovych was operating was actually to destroy Ukrainian army, and they were saying like, who do we fight with? We don't need this large army, and it was decreasing. The amount was decreasing, and I think back then it was like 50,000. And of course this army wasn't trained properly and nothing like. And I remember like in 2007 or in 2008 there was an article published in one of the leading newspapers, Сегодня, Today, which was owned by Rinat Akhmetov, one of the oligarchs from the Donbass region, and the article was about what will happen if Russia will invade Ukraine. And it was so this is the article published, but maybe you still can find it in the internet. And an article says, like, well, what will happen? Like, Ukrainian soldiers will just surrender. They will just surrender, and Russia will, like, in a few days, Russia will be able to occupy all the area until the Dnieper River, so half of Ukraine. So I mean, how is it possible that such article could be like published and like no one brought any attention to this? Like it wasn't done. It was done on purpose, of course. I mean, so they were preparing this long time ago. But like people would not. I mean, of course, there were people in Odessa, because Odessa is complicated city. Let's put it this way. And Russian propaganda here was very strong, and we had a pro-Russian channel, ATB, owned by local oligarch Markov, who was financed by FSB. It was obvious.
FSB is the Internal Security Forces of
FSB
Ukraine.
FSB is the successor of KGB, of Russian KGB.
That's right.
So it was this TV channel was founded by the Russian special intelligence services in order to bring the Russian propaganda here, and they were I mean, they were quite successful, but with the amount of money, like there were billions of dollars spent on this, of course, and these billions of dollars were just hijacked by people like oligarchs who own this channel, and the Russia spent like billions of dollars to their sleeping agents, to the pro-Russian journalists, to create this idea to brainwash people so they would like love the idea of having Russia here, but it didn't happen because like most of the money was just stolen. This is the part of the Russian culture, this is how you live. But the Putin was informed that everybody here would love this idea, everybody, and that's why they started this like people's initiative that people are taking the administrative buildings and proclaiming some people republic like it was in Donetsk and Luhansk.
In 2014.
In 2014,
in
yeah.
Odessa.
So, they were trying to do this in Odessa. On the 2nd May, there was a clash between pro-Ukrainian and pro-Russian group. The pro-Russian group was consisted by the criminals, which were identified before they had firearms, they had guns, and it was orchestrated by one of the Polish chiefs. And but it happened that way that pro-Ukrainian group learned about their plans, and they brought larger amount of people, and even without firearms, they managed to overtake and disperse this crowd. And after that, they went to the Kulikovo field where there was a camp house of the pro-Russian protesters. Pro-Russian protesters locked themselves in a trade union house. And the crowd came to the trade union house and they asked them to leave. They didn't want to. And then someone in the trade house started to shooting from AK at the pro-Ukrainian crowd. Then situation went out of the hand, and pro-Ukrainian crowd started trying to break into trade union house. So, some of them started to light Molotov cocktails, and it's not clear actually, because Molotov cocktails were thrown from the trade union house as well. And into the trade union house as well. So at some point it went on fire. The pro-Ukrainian crowd managed to get inside the trade union house. So there were clashes. Some people got killed by the fire. Some of them got killed by the smoke. But I actually treat this as an episode of the civil war in another side, because it was real war. It was a fight. It was a fight for Ukraine, and that's how Odessa still is Ukraine, because if pro-Ukrainians and Ukrainians would lose this battle, we would have the administrative building taken, and I don't remember who the mayor was back then. Was it Truhanov already, or was it another mayor? But it doesn't matter, because the local authorities would back up this crowd, and the police would back up everyone. So it was just the only way to defend like the things that they believed in. It was the only way to show Putin as well and the Russians that this is not a pro-Russian city. You can't do the things you did in Crimea and Donetsk and Luhansk here. So that's how Odessa is not part of Russia and will never be, as we understand it right now. So the reason why the war didn't escalate back then was that because the Putin was disinformed about that everyone wants to be a part of Russia here. It wasn't true. So he spent money in vain.
That brings to mind a question I have to ask then, because it seems like in some way the same thing that happened just a year and a half ago in 2022, and we'll get to that, where Putin seems to have been misinformed about the state of public opinion in Ukraine, happened also in 2014. Do you feel like he repeated that mistake?
Of course.
Interesting.
Of course, because well, there's another opinion, but like well, they came in when they came into Kiev region. They were with their parade uniforms, right? So they really believed that there will be no real.
In 2022.
In 2022, so they didn't believe that actually the Ukrainian army and Ukrainians will fight them.
Mm-hmm.
So they really believed it would be like a stroll.
Yeah.
So they will just came with their tanks and weapons. Everybody will be running scared, and that will be it.
Well, we'll revisit that. But let's return first. So the period from 2014 to 2022, there was fighting in the east, but most of Ukraine was at peace. Where did your career go from there? Did you continue being a journalist?
Yes, of course. I was working with this agency, and also I was in the. I can say I was in the front line in the Lugansk. There was a town called Shastia, which is now destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
And in the hands of the Russians. I was there with the Swedish journalist and with some soldiers, and I was reporting from. I'm almost reporting I was writing stories from Ukraine and the post-Soviet countries until the 2022.
Mm-hmm.
And after the war broke, of course, I became a war correspondent.
What is it?
An animal, probably.
Probably a cat.
Pigeons.
Yeah, probably.
Or pigeons. Where should we start?
After the war broke out, after 2022, you continued as a journalist.
Yeah, you may say I started being journalistic.
Why so?
Well, I became a journalist because I wanted to do some. Well, I wanted to do something that mattered.
Mm-hmm.
And but like it was never so important to be a journalist as after 24 February. Because someone should have reported about the war crimes for one thing, and for another thing, the Russian propaganda machine was so huge and so powerful. So they had like lots of TV channels in Europe and in the United States, like Russia Today or other TV channels that were broadcasting the Russian view on the things, and Russian view on the things is completely backwards. And I started to work as a fixer, like from the first day, with the foreign journalists who came here from France, from Germany, from Belgium, from other countries. Some of them didn't have like a clue what's happening, and someone wanted to say a Nazi, like show me the Nazi, where are you Nazis, so I would have to to explain them what's happening here, and showing the real things, like showing the real truth. So I was their hands and whatever. So I was helping them to bring the reality, the real picture to their countries, and that's how I think I serve my country as well, because I was fighting Russian propaganda like this, and I also wrote articles for the German media about Ukraine, and to tell the truth and to fight the Russian propaganda, and I think it was worth.
And from there, you got involved in humanitarian aid. How did that happen? As a volunteer?
Well, my first encounter with the volunteers was, of course, after the 24th February.
Mm.
I met with I met the next. I met Marat Abdullayev from Next NGO, and he with other guys who were just delivering stuff to elderly people or like single mothers, just delivering food to them with their own cost, because they knew that they need help. I mean, the economic situation was really bad, like in the first months, and it's not it's not getting better, you know. And we had like the terrible problem was like the shelves in the stores were half empty because the logistic chains were broken. The port was closed. The support was closed. So the logistic chains were broken, and people were not able to buy the foods because of there was delays with the pension, and with salaries, with everything, and prices went up, of course. So lots of people needed help, and lots of people fled from occupied regions, from Kherson, from Donetsk region, from Kharkiv region. Lots of people came to Odessa, so there was lots of people who needed help, like urgently, immediately. That was my first encounter with and also I was when someone approached me on the street and asked for the money, I never, I give them money all the time, because like, well, you never know, money doesn't cost anything at this point. Lives matter, money isn't, like during the war. But it wasn't just in the first months, because there was a lot of people who really came from other cities, and they didn't. Well, someone could came like in a big shiny car and had iPhone, but doesn't have any money because he lost everything. He lost house, job, savings, whatever. I mean, everything. I started to work like more closely with the humanitarian aid in this year. I think since June. It just happened by chance because I have lots of friends in the volunteering movement, like my good friend Abe. And I was helping a British couple who were helping people in the occupied villages in Mykolaiv and Kherson region. There was and there still is a big problem with the drinking water, so they were delivering water to them, and I was basically translating, helping them with that, and visiting the villages, the occupied villages. I also was able to make some stories about these people, and after that I realized that so there is a huge problem in the. There is a huge problem with how you are delivering. There's a huge problem with humanitarian aid, and there is a huge problem with. War brought a lot of problems, right? So mostly the media covers the war crimes. So. The missile hit the building in Zaporizhia, the missile hit the building in Odessa, whatever, and that's it. But what happened after? What happened with the people who lived in this building? Do they get new flats? Where did they live? Do they live in the street? Do they kill themselves? Do they get any psychological help? What are their stories? No, big media are not interested in that. They are interested in the war crimes and the big stories. But there is small stories behind that. Yeah. And by telling these stories and by spreading information about a couple in a village, in a destroyed village, in the destroyed house, who live in their camp beds, you can actually help them. You can bring more attention to these problems, and you can and in having this information, you can also turn to other NGOs. So, look, here are the concrete people. They do exist. They have real problem. Help them if you can. So there is the problem is with the spreading information about individuals who are in need, or about the places that need like real humanitarian aid. So there's a big problem with that because these villages are distant, and like the big media are interested in big stories.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How would you evaluate then, as a whole, the humanitarian response or the international humanitarian response in Ukraine from your perspective as a journalist and as a volunteer?
Well, I mean, this is really like great movement because it is great, right? So lots of organizations came here to help. There are individuals, like small organizations, like the Sunflower Project, like Dignity Aid, who are really doing stuff, like real stuff. So they are helping real people, and they're not involved in this paperwork. But there are like huge organizations like Red Cross or UNICEF or United Nations, and what they are doing, or I can name some more, but I wouldn't do it. So what they're basically doing is they're just like spreading the bureaucracy. They'll multiply in papers, and they have like huge staff here, which also, and the people in this staff, they're also like filling the forms, filling the papers, doing the needs assessment like for months, and after that they're doing another needs assessment because this needs assessment already doesn't match the reality. So it's like endless circle of the paperwork. And they are like, especially United Nations, they are driving here on the big shiny white armored cars because like if they will be just using like a normal Ukrainian car like Deolanos, probably something would happen with them. I don't know. Maybe it's like there was instructions. You shouldn't use normal cars. Also, they pay, I know like for a fact that they like live in the apartments like for 2,000 euros cost amounts because like that's how you help, right? You came here to drive a shiny cars, live in the nice apartments, and do like the ridiculous amount of paperwork and have parties after that because you work so hard like the whole week. You need the party because if you will not party, you will not be able to do more paperwork.
To be fair, they do a lot of they move a lot of material, right? They get a lot of stuff into the country.
Some of them apparently do. Yeah.
Absolutely.
But they could have done it like more effective, also because they have more resources.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the question of how resources are spent.
Yeah.
How they are used.
Yeah, and that we can agree entirely. There is a lot of reform to be done. Well, let's turn the page a little bit to the situation now. Could you first talk about your day-to-day experience and what it's like living under air raids and the possibility of mobilization and just sort of the day-to-day life as a Ukrainian man today?
That's a good question. Yeah, I was waiting for it to come. Day-to-day life is beautiful. I mean, it's amazing. It's filled with great things, like air raid alerts. Sometimes drones are blowing something up like 500 meters from you. You hear the boom. You hear the windows broken. Your house is shaking. That's beautiful. That's amazing. That's all. And also when the air entire what is this?
The anti-aircraft.
Yeah. Anti-aircraft is working. This is amazing. You can actually gather you can gather a crowd of people and they're just watch the sky like being totally amazed of the amount of the firework you see in the sky and the explosions and like this is so romantic. I encourage everyone to go here and see it just to experience because like
tongue in cheek, just to be clear. Yeah. So we spend some time in shelters. We spend a lot of time hearing bombs. We spend some sleepless nights. And you specifically as a man are under quite a bit of pressure to go into the armed forces, right?
Yes, I'm. I don't know how to call myself, how to call my situation. Well, the Ukrainian authorities have the policy of every man should serve in the army. And I think in January they passed a law that everyone who doesn't have a military papers are not able to work legally in Ukraine. So basically, to get military papers, you need to go to the military recruitment office and said, okay, so I came here because I wanted to check, I want to be registered. Can you please issue my military papers? And like these days, it works like this: when you go to the military recruitment office, you are sent to the army. It not like especially the front lines, or you're not sent to the front lines, like it's not 100%, but you might find yourself there as well. So this is the way to push like everyone to serve, because well, if you can't work, then what else you can do, right? Because like in the army they pay a salary at least. But it's a tricky situation. It's a tricky question because the medical exam that you should take before they recruit you is a formality right now. So they took there are cases which were published and reported. So they took one man with epilepsy, and he died the next day, just in the training just in the training center. So this is that. I mean, this is a fact. I know disabled people who were taken to the army and who are now in the front lines. And so these things are happening because the medical exam because they are told to like bring as much people as they can. Is it illegal? Yes. Does anybody care? No, because it's hard even for the people who were taken into the army with the diagnosis, like with the diagnosis of disability. It's hard to challenge the decision of the medical commission. It's hard to challenge. I don't know why it's hard to challenge. It looks like when you are in the army, this is just one-way ticket, so you can't really get out at this point, because these days people, almost every soldier who is in the front line have been shell-shocked like multiple times. And like if it was not the war time, I mean, because the war didn't start on 24 February 22. The war started in 2014. So like in normal times, the one who is shell-shocked will be sent home. But now, like 1 week after the treatment, the shell-shocked soldiers is in the positions, or the blast wounds, the firearm wounds. Wounded people are also sent back, so they are not sent home. So this is the health problem, right? So the health problem is very it's critical. This is not the only problem that the army has right now. So Ukraine has like a lot of support from the West in terms of the equipment, weapons. It's not enough. It's not enough to like overthrow the Russian position like during the counteroffensive. It's not enough. There's no doubt about it. But the question is like it is the second year of the war, and Ukraine also receives like funds from the West and from other partners, but the volunteers are still buying boots for the soldiers. The volunteers are still buying cars for the soldiers, and if not this huge volunteering movement inside Ukraine, volunteers buy the drones for the soldiers as well. So I don't know how we will be able to keep it up. And the question is like, why the government is not supporting the army properly. So we have 1 million army at this point, and it's not well equipped.
Mm-hmm.
The soldiers doesn't have the necessary things like drones, because like if you have a reconnaissance drone, you can see like where the enemy is, and you can keep more people alive, so there will be less casualties like in your squad.
Of course. So, do you feel like the lack of materiel for the armed forces is primarily caused by corruption, or by a lack of resources coming into the country or available?
It caused by the corruption. It caused also by the uh, inability to create like logistics.
Mm-hmm.
For some reason, I mean, they should have done it
Mm-hmm.
by then. And also probably because there is not much care about the units and the brigades and the soldiers from the military commandment, from the highest military commandment, because I mean, well, they know about these problems. I mean, even if I as a civilian know about these problems, they do.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, that's a big question. That's a big question why they do not create these logistic routes, and why they don't fight with the corruption, like corruption in the military is in the high level, and in the level of some brigades as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this may cause a lot of problems. You can't win the war when you're not you're not doing your best. You're not giving your best, because well, that doesn't work like that.
So, speaking of which, how do you see the war going? We have pretty stable front lines since the retaking of Kharkiv and Kherson last year. Russian offensive, Ukrainian counteroffensive, not making a lot of progress. You've talked about some problems with the military, the draft. Where do you see this going, perhaps, in the next few months or coming times?
Well, yes, you're perfectly right. So there is a stalemate at this point, basically, and to make any progress, Ukrainian government should change the tactics or have any tactics, because at this point the tactics, it looks like you just send more and more people into the counteroffensive and try to break the wall, which is almost impossible to do, because the Russians build fortresses in the front line, and the whole area is mined. The whole area in front of the fortresses, in front of the Russian trenches, is mined. Like every inch is mined. It's not like it's not the conventional mining, because like when you mine the area in conventional way, you need to be able to demine it.
Mm-hmm.
But they are not going to. I mean, the Russians are not going to demine it, so they just shower it mines. They just it's swamped with mines, so
Mm-hmm.
it's not possible to demine it like it will take. It is taking a lot of efforts. It's taking a lot of casualties, and the small progress that we have, like in the Zaporizhia region, with this village of Robotine, it cost like lots of human lives, and we don't know how many.
Mm-hmm.
If this is the tactics that our government use and wants to use like further, then there is a question. So why? Because we don't have as much people as Russia has. So if the Russian tactics was the same like since probably the First World War,
Mm-hmm.
and it didn't change. Like they spent like 100,000 people in Stalingrad in the World War II and the Second World War, and there are spent like lots of people in Ukraine to gain something. They spend like thousands, like thousands people to gain Bakhmut. They're now trying to gain Avdiivka with the same wages, just sending like more and more troops. Russians are trying to conquer Avdiivka by the same way they conquered Bakhmut.
Mm-hmm.
But like we all know what the Russian army is. We all know that Russia is dictatorship, and we know about the Russian tactics. If Ukraine is going to use the same tactics, there should be a question asked: why are we using these tactics?
Mm-hmm.
Are we not able to find another way, because like in a military sense, you can't win like this in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
You can have some small victories like the village of Robotine, but to get further you need to do something like that. Of course, we don't have enough the counteroffensive. It's the way we are counterattacking right now. It's very hard and difficult because we are using most infantry.
Mm-hmm.
But we need to have planes. We need to have bombers and jets. We don't have them. Like we don't have F-16 until this point. And there was no time. There was no and they wanted to counterattack as soon as possible, and they started. And they were promised, of course, like the military were promised with more weapons and with the I think jets should have been here by now.
Mm-hmm.
But it didn't happen, and maybe it happened only like in 9 months or something like that. So we need to think about changing the military tactics, because like just sending more and more people to storm the fortress and just stepping on the mine doesn't seem like a good way. Doesn't seem like a way to gain victory.
Well, we'll see where it goes. Little lighter question for our last one. Tell us about your organization, Save UA Media. What's the goals? What's your hopes for the future for that?
Well, the Save UA Media is a charity foundation, and the website it's a media project about the southern region, about Odessa, Kherson, and Mykolaiv. And I called it. I started it. I registered officially like 1 year ago, and I've managed to create a website. I think in March last year, and took a lot of time just to create it, to fill it with articles. It's totally on. It has no funding, like zero funding, and it's just an initiative, like independent initiative, because we don't have enough independent journalism in this region specifically, and we don't have English language website about the region, and and I call this project as a project of hope. And since I started doing the volunteering work this year, and when I traveled to the deoccupied villages when I was in Kherson, I realized that there is a huge problem with because nobody knows about the needs of these people. Nobody knows about how bad situation is in the occupied villages and in Kherson really. And we need to spread information about that. When I was 19 or 20, when I just started my way in journalism, I read a book of some Russian journalist, and it was like some introduction to journalism for the people who wanted to be journalists.
Mm-hmm.
And she wrote like, well, the biggest disappointment that you will encounter, that you will when you are encountering with the problem, you can only describe it, but you would want to help, but you are not able to. So this is the way, like, this is the way of the Soviet or post-Soviet thinking. So you can't really do anything about nothing. You can only, as a journalist, you can only write about it. It's like the same thing which was like bothering me all the time with the National Geographic channel, or the Discovery Channel, when they have these programs about the animals, and they film on some predator, whatever. I forgot
Predator,
the word.
yeah.
Predator. So like a lion or a cheetah, and they kill some animal, and so they're not interrupt. So they just shooting their videos. So it's what journalists supposed to do, right? So they're just supposed to write about something and forget about it, and go to the next topic. But I want to do more, and I want to, by writing about people problems, I want to help to solve them. For one thing is because when you have a touching story of someone, of some loss, of someone who encountered some loss during the occupation, or the family was killed by the Russians, or they lost everything, like their house, or they encountered some terrible things, and you're telling this story like not like a robot, not like just it's ordinary thing. You may have like some connection with some other people who would want to help them, and also like having this information, I can share it with other NGOs who can actually help them, and the goal is to help people by spreading the information about their problems, and I call this project the project of of hope, kindness, and that possibly leads to changes.
Awesome. Well, Sergey, thank you. And thank you to our audience for being with us today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. You can visit dignityaidinternational.org. To donate, a monthly donation helps us do humanitarian aid and support our podcast team. Also visit Save UA Media. You can donate there to the cause that Sergey and other journalists are doing to bring up the problems and help the people of Ukraine. And Sergey, I just so appreciate you being with me today. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you.
You're a good man.